Hey everyone, welcome to today's video. My name's Stephanie, and today I'm so excited to introduce you to SYLVANCLAW. I'm going to be reviewing their debut collection called Into the Glade, which is this 8-piece lineup of these mixed finishes, all inspired by the magic and whimsy of stepping into an overgrown forest. So you already know I'm here for the vibes, but I will save more of my thoughts for the end after some comparisons. For now, let's just get into the swatches. The first shade we have is Mahogany Fringe, which is described as a reddish brown with a pink to red to orange shifting multichrome shimmer. This one has a pretty standard shimmer type of formula where it is a little bit sheer on the first coat, but decently pigmented. I would say it had a little bit of a thinner formula, but still very, very easy to work with. It was like super fluid and just easy to paint with. So I didn't really struggle with the formula at all. And even though it was sheer, I found that it built up really nicely in just 2 coats alone. I think because it is a slightly deeper color, but my nails are also a little bit shorter. I imagine for longer nails, you might want to do a 3rd coat. And here it is with some adjusted lighting, so you can see that shift from pink to red to orange. It really has this fiery, warm look. The next shade is Ladybird, and this is a red jelly polish filled with micro matte glitters, scattered holo glitters, and a golden shimmer. So even though this is described as red, I feel like there is a very strong pink undertone, though I guess that is a lot more apparent on the first coat. And as you can see, this had a really beautiful formula. It was super even coverage, very self-leveling. I feel like it could definitely pass on 1 coat if you want that really sheer, juicy, almost jelly sandwich kind of look, or of course you can build it up to fuller opacity in 2 or 3 coats. A lot of the white glitters just have a pink look because of the red jelly base, which I think is so pretty, but I will say that the gold shimmer is definitely on the subtle side. Next we have Golden Hour, which is a gold nail polish with red to orange shifting shimmer and a scattered holographic glitter. This one had another really nice formula that was decently pigmented on the first coat. It is still going to be a bit sheer and uneven in some spots, but the gold shimmer in this one really stands out. It almost has that shimmer metallic kind of effect, I would say, because of how intense it is. So I personally found this one opaque enough for me in just 2 coats, though I think you could still see a little hint of nail line. The little hollow micro glitter is super gorgeous, though you can see a little bit of texture from it, and I also didn't really notice the red to orange shifting shimmer. Other than that though, I thought this was such a beautiful polish, and here's an out of focus clip so you can see the hollow. The next shade in the collection is Field of Wonder, which is an emerald green base filled with color-shifting flakes and orange sparks of reflective glitter. The description says that there's also a dusting of blue to purple shifting shimmer throughout, but I personally didn't see that. I think largely because the base is just so dark and pigmented, it kind of covers it up a little bit. Even with the flakies, it's a lot easier to kind of see the color shiftiness of them in the bottle where they're stuck to the sides of the bottle. So from there I could tell that the flakies were pink and gold, but it was a little hard to pick that up on the nail. So I'm still unsure about how I feel about this one because I thought it looked really beautiful in the bottle, definitely like a wildflower field, which was so cool, but it didn't really translate on the nail for me. Up next we have Pond-ering, a lightly tinted blue jelly packed with orange to green to yellow shifting shimmer and blue irregular holographic glitter. First of all, I absolutely love the name. It's just so cute and whimsical and just a perfect name for this polish. And the polish itself is also really pretty, and similar to the other shades, it had a nice formula that was very easy to work with and apply. Though the second coat I did kind of go back in a couple of times to sort of do a little bit of manipulation because of how packed it is with those little glitters. But it definitely didn't feel chunky like other glitter polishes tend to be, so I thought it was a really good balance of the glitters and shimmers and the jelly base. And I also loved how the shimmer in this one shifted from orange to yellow to green. Then we have Mushroom Whimsy, which is a mushroom brown with a green to blue to purple shifting shimmer. So this is definitely the sheerest from the collection. As you can see here on the first coat, it like barely has this brown tint of color to the base, but it's also there enough that I don't think you can use it as a topper, at least not over lighter colors. It probably would work better over much darker colors. I just ended up building this one up on its own, and I thought it looked passable on 2 coats. I think the base is just, you know, a little sheer, but I guess in certain angles it might look a little bit streaky too, so you know, depending on your application and your nail length, you could wear it in 2 coats, but I ended up going in with a 3rd coat and I much prefer the look of it. I just really like how the base deepened up a bit more and it just provided more contrast for the shimmer to really pop. The next polish we have is Berry Juice, a deep berry purple with pink shimmer as well as gold, green, and purple colored reflective glitter. The formula on this one, as you can see, is a bit sheer and almost jelly leaning. So again, it might not look super impressive on the first coat here, but doing a 2nd coat definitely helps even everything out and just darken up the color. I did have to just go over the spots a couple of times, but it did end up self-leveling really nicely. So again, the formula is definitely easy to work with at least. I think it did build up to a beautiful deep purple color. I love how sparkly it is, but I didn't really see the other colored reflective glitter. I only saw gold. And rounding out the collection, we have Winging It, which is a soft pink with a subtle green shimmer and a scattered holographic glitter. This had, again, another beautiful formula that was just very easy to apply and work with. I found that this one also self-leveled beautifully, so even on the first coat, it was really even, just obviously very, very sheer. I do think it looks nice on just 2 coats alone because the sheerness kind of lends itself to that ethereal fairy wing sort of vibe, but I did also build this one up in 3 coats just to show you how much coverage you get, where you do still see some visible nail line because it is just such a light color, but it's just so whimsical and pretty. The shimmer is really nice and it has a beautiful hollow sparkle. So here is the first half of the collection worn as a skittle. I'm wearing 2 coats of each shade in direct sunlight. I would say these 4 have really great coverage in just 2 coats. Again, maybe Mahogany Fringe is the most sheer, so you might want a 3rd coat if you want to just intensify the color a little bit more. I feel like it almost looks very orange here on camera. It is more of like a brick color in real life, and here in lower lighting you can see more of those flakies in Field of Wonder, which I thought was really pretty. And here is the second half of the collection, worn as a skittle, again in 2 coats each. I think coverage-wise, these were on the more sheer side, generally speaking, maybe with the exception of Berry Juice being just a darker color. But Mushroom Whimsy is definitely the most sheer, so if you're not a fan of visible nail line, I would highly recommend doing 3 coats for that shade, or just especially using a blurring base coat. Now for comparisons, we're starting with Mahogany Fringe, and I wanted to quickly show this next to Apocalypse's Dear Billy, which I just recently reviewed. It's another shimmery red, but definitely a very different tone. I would say the color of Mahogany Fringe reminded me more of like some Mooncat reds. First I pulled out the Arsonist, but that's a little bit too true of a red. If anything, it's much closer to Whiskey Sunrise, which is another coppery red sort of multi-chrome shade. So they're not exact dupes because Mahogany Fringe has a little bit more of a pink shimmer head on, and it's also a bit more sheer, but they're definitely very close. Some other reds that I thought it reminded me of were ILNP's Ruby and Prism Parade's Rita. Ruby, similar to Mooncat's The Arsonist, was a little bit too true of a red, like it wasn't as orangey leaning, and the same goes for Rita, where honestly that one's probably closer to Ruby than it is to Mahogany Fringe. So no dupes here. Next for Ladybird, I wanted to quickly show this next to Cirque's My, which is a jelly red with a gold shimmer, but this one has an intense holographic sparkle instead of matte glitters, but even the red base is a little bit more orange leaning. So to get closer to that almost hot pink kind of undertone of Ladybird, it reminded me a lot of Mooncat's My Sandy Claus outfit from the Nightmare Before Christmas collab, and I figured I could also show it next to Zoya's Sophia, even though that one's more of a true true red and not really pink leaning. It does have a gold shimmer in it, so I thought it was kind of similar, but not similar enough to call it a dupe or anything. I actually think Ladybird is kind of like the in-between of these two shades. Moving on to Golden Hour, I knew I had to show this next to Prism Parade's Golden Mirage from their recent Roadside Oasis collection, and I figured I can also show it next to Starrily's AU since it's another warm kind of gold shade that I have, but that one's a lot more intense. It almost has this like foily metallic kind of finish, so Golden Hour is definitely the closest to Golden Mirage. The main difference is that it has the Holo sparkle while Golden Mirage doesn't. Then for Field of Wonder, I didn't have anything quite like this, but it did kind of remind me of Mooncat's We're Back Witches from the Hocus Pocus 2 collection. That one is a magnetic, but I am going to be showing it unmagnetized because you just get that similar effect of like the green kind of base with these golden flakies. So not exact dupes, but definitely similar vibes. Then for Pond-ering, I wanted to quickly show this next to Prism's Poolside, just because I thought it was like another shimmery sheer blue, but as you can see, the shade of blue is definitely very different. In a similar vein, here it is next to a couple of Mooncat blues, which I thought were going to be closer, even though the flakies in the Mooncat shade are much larger and iridescent instead of these hollow glitters. As far as a light blue glitter polish goes, I figured I should show this next to Holo Taco's Frostlight, which is sadly no longer with us. That one is your traditional chunky glitter type of formula though, so building it up in 2 coats each, I feel like you can see some similarities with like the Holo Sparkle, but the shade of blue is a little off, not to mention the Holo Taco is missing the shimmer, so I thought I could add Scorched Earth on top of that, but it wasn't really the right color. Next for Mushroom Whimsy, I knew I had to show this next to the 2 Mooncat shades from the Pandora Unboxed collection, Lust for Vengeance on the left and Root of All Evil on the right. They're the only polishes in my collection that are similar to Mushroom Whimsy, but neither of them are dupes. The 2 Mooncat shades are darker, but also just more opaque and pigmented compared to how sheer Mushroom Whimsy is, but they're also just different colors anyway. Like Root of All Evil is more purple, Lust for Vengeance is like a berry pink, and Mushroom Whimsy is more brown, but the shimmer colors are definitely pretty similar. Next for Berry Juice, I knew I wanted to see this next to KBShimmer's Let the Beat Drop, which is another berry purple reflective glitter kind of polish, but that one's a lot more opaque and a lot more packed with the reflective glitters. Even aside from that though, I feel like the colors are slightly off, so I wouldn't exactly call them dupes. I did also want to show this next to a couple of ILNP purples. First we have Dakota on the left, which is a little bit more of that like magenta purple kind of color, and then Bewitched on the right, which is a little bit more of that eggplanty purple, though that one's in like a more blackened base, so it's a lot darker than Berry Juice. Dakota is a little bit more similar, but I think it's too red leaning, not to mention it's more pigmented, but I figured I could still try to recreate Berry Juice by layering Starrily's Golden Starlight, which is a gold reflective glitter topper, and it's kind of giving similar vibes even if they're not exact dupes. And lastly for Winging It, I knew I had to see this next to Mooncat's Moonicorn, as well as Nailed It's Compulsion, which was a previous polish pickup shade. Because even though Winging It is described as a pink base, I feel like it's definitely very purple leaning, like it's not really that pink, though it definitely looks like it here, especially compared to Moonicorn and Compulsion, which are like very true blue-toned purple shades. Though I do think Winging It ended up looking really close to Compulsion. So that wraps up my swatches and comparisons of SYLVANCLAW's Into the Glade collection. As always, I would love to know your thoughts on this brand and this release because I thought they were really lovely. Like I mentioned in the intro, just the vibes alone are already so up my alley, but even trying out the polishes themselves, I was really impressed with a lot of the formulas being just so easy to work with, especially considering I didn't really love the brush. Not that it was was bad by any means. It's just that typical rectangular, like flat edge brush that we see in other brands like ILNP or OPI. So, you know, they're not bad, but I just prefer a wide paddle brush. But even still, I just had a really nice time with the formulas on the majority of them. Some of them maybe were like a little bit questionable on the first coat, but I feel like they looked nice enough onto, I don't know how to explain it other than they just feel like very beginner friendly kind of formulas. Like you don't have to overwork them. They're not like finicky at all. So it was just really nice to paint with them. So all in all, I thought they were really nice, but I would love to know your thoughts down below so we can chat about it. But thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!